Hello again. Essay here. Anyone who's ever watched an old Howard Hawks or a John Ford film, or at the very least listened to Iron Maiden's Run to the Hills, probably has some knowledge about the Indian Wars. Yeah, cowboys and Indians. And of course, those wars went on for quite a while too. All the way, from the early settlers all the way through to the Civil War and pretty much terminated, I think it was at Wounded Knee in the about 1890s, which most people know that was less of a battle and more of a massacre, but whatever. But of course, people tend to forget that what was going on during that period was that you had at the base level, you had two groups of people. You had one group of people, the Indians, who migrated here long ago, across that old land bridge across Siberia. And then you had the new people, mostly Europeans, English, French, Spanish, etc. And of course, the new people overwhelmed the indigenous people. And of course, you know what happened next. Some of those indigenous people didn't survive, particularly the ones on the East Coast. I mean, how many times you heard the story about how the Indians helped the early pilgrims and then to thank them by basically wiping them out? Yeah. But in the end, that sort of thing happens more often than you realize. Indeed, it's happened quite a bit throughout human history, where you have one group of people set up, established, and then a new group of people shows up and supersedes them. Now, sometimes they don't put much of a fight, but other times they do put up a fight. Like, for example, in England, when the indigenous population, the Anglos, were overrun by the Romans. But the thing is, Romans didn't stay. No, they basically backed out and walked away for a variety of reasons. And yet, part of the part of Roman culture stayed behind, such as baths, for example. Yeah, makes you wonder what those early Anglos smelt like before the Romans introduced them to soap and water. Just saying. But then, of course, the Saxons showed up. And the Saxons stayed. Why you think the people are referred to as Anglo-Saxon? Well, guess what? Whoop-de-doo, who are you? England is suffering another new invasion. But this one is different from even what happened during the Romans and the Saxons. Now, I'm going to show you a snippet of video from our old friend Paul Joseph Watson. And let's just say this. What's happening in England, if it continues on its path, is going to look less like the Saxon invasion and more like the wars between the American cavalry and the Plains Indians. Okay, are you ready? Here we go.
Most people missed this and the news media didn't even cover it. But given the ominous nature of what this man is predicting, it behooves us all to sit up and take notice.
The main threat to the security and prosperity of the West generally, and the UK specifically now, is civil war, not external war.
Okay, that got my attention. Professor David Betts, who has advised both the UK and US government, explains the primary factor in fostering conditions for mass unrest in the UK.
Multiculturalism was a disaster for the country, that it was leading to a society that was ghettoized.
And that thanks to open borders, the state is destroying its own legitimacy.
The major problem of government is this destruction of legitimacy.
In addition to the grooming gang outrage.
More importantly, and much more corrosively, are the industrial rape gang revelations, which are ongoing, that have had the effect, which will increase and become even more apparent, of draining out whatever residual social capital existed.
Which has strong historical parallels.
There's even echoes, I think. I mean, I'm surprised that we don't hear a lot more about the Boudiccan revolt.
Can I spell it out for non-British listeners? That
Sure.
Boudicca's daughters were raped by Roman soldiers. And this was the precipitating event.
From his exhaustive studies, Betts concludes that diversity is definitively not our greatest strength.
British society is fundamentally explosively configured. Multiculturalism has drained the nation's social capital. It's encouraged factionalism and polarization, both of which are up massively. As a result of which, we see that nativist sentiments are increasingly manifested in a narrative of downgrading or displacement that is one of the most powerful causes of civil conflict. Mm-hmm. The recent headlines surrounding the rape gangs or the murders of children, terrorism, and the like feed this narrative of downgrading absolutely perfectly. They align with that idea.
And could actually be the catalyst for our downfall.
Primarily, the one in the which is most evident now on account of recent events, is the failure to secure the country, the failure to secure its borders against what can only be described as a large-scale border raid, and the failure to protect children, the most vulnerable people in our society, from the most extraordinary and grotesque predation on very large scale.
Leading to a form of civil war based on geographical and demographic divides.
The coming civil war that I imagine will have initially the qualities of a Latin American dirty war, but that is going to metastasize pretty rapidly into a broader civil conflict that will have an essential rural versus urban dimension. And that relates essentially to demographic patterns in the broader society.
And that British identity has been drastically undermined by 2 generations of indoctrination telling us to be ashamed of our history.
It's a much more fractured society. It's one that has a much less secure connection to those aspects of its history that have made it the stable, well-governed, essentially more or less content society that it has been.
Soaring taxes, inflation, and general economic malaise is also fueling mass resentment.
On top of that, the increasingly predatory wealth extraction policies that have to come in because they're simply running out of money.
And that the potential civil war he's warning of in order to try to avoid could happen within half a decade.
If we can make it through the next 5 years without it happening, that would be a good sign. I think the rupture is going to come before then on current trajectory.
Professor Betts is by no means some random crank. He's a top UK government advisor, having worked with the UK Ministry of Defence, GCHQ, and the US Defence Department, and he's an expert in the field of modern warfare. He's perhaps the most authoritative and credible person that could possibly sound this alarm bell, which makes it all the more worrying.
Society has gone off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
Most people believe that politics has ceased to be able to solve problems.
Betts describes himself as a classic member of the establishment and said he'd been approached by people from within government and the security services who were keen to heed his warning.
Having written the paper, I've had other people approach me, including people from government and in the security services, about the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see what happens after the podcast, which will have a somewhat bigger reach, I would guess. They've all come back to ask for more detail, but they're not certainly not rejecting outright.
Will enough of them listen to do anything? Or, as Betts suggests during the podcast, are we too far gone?
Lorraine Matthews, one of the last non-Muslim residents, said, "I wouldn't go out at night on my own, as it is dangerous if you're not from the Muslim community. It isn't sensible for a woman to walk there after dark. The Asian lads gather on the corners, They make you feel intimidated because they don't respect white women.
New sentencing guidelines just dropped suggesting ethnic minorities could receive lighter punishments for the same crimes as British natives. The official enshrinement of a two-tier justice system.
You've got the two-tier justice system, a highly politicized judiciary, increasingly partisan and frankly incompetent police service.
Basic law and order feels like it's evaporating.
Stop.
Meanwhile, you're seeing increased desperation from the state broadcaster, the BBC, which has launched wall-to-wall saturation coverage of the supposed benefits and inevitability of mass migration, even as polls show an ever-growing amount of the population are vehemently resistant to it. At current rates, in 10 years, 25% of Britain's population will be first-generation migrants, and a full third of the population will be first- or second-generation migrants by 2035. By 2046, we'll have to build 15 cities the size of Birmingham to accommodate them all, which of course won't happen, leading to the collapse of public services, leading to more unrest. A perfect storm is unfortunately brewing.
Is it the fact that our pride and joy in the NHS is falling apart? You can't get a doctor's appointment. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm supposed to be seeing a nurse every 3 to 6 months. I haven't seen one in like 2 years. Young people can't afford to get on the property ladder anymore, and social housing is being used up by illegal immigrants. Taxes have got so high that even when you work your ass off, you still feel poor. There's so many reasons why this country is falling apart, and there are so many reasons why civil unrest could be a lot closer than we think.
But it doesn't have to be this way. Look at Sweden, the last country on earth you'd expect to be setting the example. They're now deporting more migrants than they import. And look at Denmark, after imposing strict immigration controls to prevent the growth of parallel societies, leading to the demolition of migrant ghettos, and a law which said areas of the country must not have a non-Western population over 30%. Denmark has literally already reversed mass immigration. Denmark's population aged 0 to 19 is more Danish than the total population, and 0 to 4 even more so. If you include European immigrants, Denmark's babies are currently 85.9% Danish and 89.7% European. If two uber socially progressive Scandinavian countries can do it, why can't we? Not to be overly doomer, but many are saying that the 2029 election is our last chance, if we can even make it to that.
Okay, you saw that. Now, of course, some of you are saying, oh, well, the people, they're just immigrating to England because they're looking for scones and strawberry jam and wanting to watch old episodes of Doctor Who. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, some of those people could stay back in their home countries and watch old episodes of Doctor Who on bootleg DVDs. Or for some people on certain pirate sites. Yeah, they didn't have to go all the way to England. And yet, Watson, who has talked about this issue more than once, he believes that the issue of illegal migration is coming to a head, because of how the elites who are running England into the toilet, I might add, are treating their citizens. You know, the Anglo-Saxons. And as you saw in his video, they're trying to set up a two-tier legal system now, where if you're some clown from Bangladesh or Upper Volta or Kenya or, oh my God, Syria, and you go out there and can pull a stick up, robbery, or do something really nasty like pull some little girl's panties down, you're not going to get punished much, as opposed to some guy who can trace his lineage back to the damn King Charles I and did something similar. And then, of course, some of you smart people say, well, why are they doing it? Why indeed? And, of course, as you saw in Watson's video, it appears that these elites hate their citizens and want to replace them with a new group of people. Now, before you even say the words, the Great Replacement Theory, yeah, precisely. And you thought it was only an American thing, huh? Well, apparently it's not just happening in America. It's also happening in England. And, wait for it, you ready? It's also happening all of Europe. Except perhaps maybe in Russia, but whatever. Because Watson mentioned in other videos, yeah, you have the same thing happening in Germany, or in France, Italy, until fairly recently, and even in places like in Poland. You say Poland? Yeah. There was a brief period back, I think, when Trump was president, the first time, where they had an incident where a bunch of illegal aliens somehow ended up in Belarus. Why? I don't know, because Belarus is pretty remote. I mean, you just can't get there on a local flight by way of Air France, okay? But anyway, they ended up in Belarus, and then because Poland is right next door, and Poland is part of the EU, and we'll call it Schengen zone. Yeah, these people said, ooh, whoop-de-doo, we can cross the frontier into Poland and then disappear into the EU, never to be seen again, until they pull some damn armed robbery or something, of course. But then the Polacks said, oh no, we ain't gonna have any of that. And they immediately started sticking up barbed wire and chain link fences and everything else along the frontier between two countries to keep those people out. They said, Belarus, you do what you want to these people. Don't be sending them across the border towards us, okay? And what happened to those people? I don't rightly know. Honestly. I mean, maybe they ended up in Russia, though I doubt it. Because Russians, guess what? They don't like illegal immigration either. And guess what? Unlike the people in England, they don't encourage it either. So if you're someone from, like, say, Pakistan or Afghanistan and somehow start walking north through those old Soviet republics like Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and somehow end up in Russia, let's just say this: if you're caught in that territory, God help you, because those damn Ruskies are not going to. No siree, Bob. But anyway. As you saw in Watson's video, a lot of people in England are getting really hopping mad about this. I mean, it's not so much the illegal aliens that are showing up. It's the fact that you have the people who are in charge are practically turning the country upside down and all around and inside out to accommodate them. Now, so far, they haven't started handing out those damn magical mystery debit cards with $5,000 on them and giving them free cars and free houses, at least not yet. Maybe because the people in London right now are broke. Yeah, thank you, Zelensky. But believe me, if the people in London had the money, I wouldn't be surprised if they start handing out those magical mystery debit cards. Remember the ones that old Sleepy Joe was handing out to all those knuckleheads that are coming across the border in San Isidro just a few months back? Yeah. And if you recall, the old Elon and Doge, tore up those credit cards real fast. And took back those damn rental cars. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, now some of you saying, "Oh well, how back can it really get as bad as the Indian Wars of the 19th century?" I'm thinking, it might. Now, of course, some of you saying, "Yeah, but they don't have a First Amendment in England." True. But anyone who's ever seen Braveheart knows that, hey, you don't need a gun to cause havoc in England. All you need is a sword, maybe a hatchet, and a lot of gumption. Yeah. And of course, anyone who knows history of England knows that long time before muskets showed up in England, those English knew how to really butcher the hell out of each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have to look up the history of the Battle of Hastings in 1066 to know that a bunch of guys with a bunch of instruments can really cause havoc. No joke. And of course, wait for it. Yeah, the British police, they don't got no guns. So yeah, they'll be talking about Saturday night knife fights in the streets of England when this bullshit comes to a head. Now, of course, will it? Maybe. Now, of course, you say, yeah, but some of the older English people, they'll probably just, check out and say, I'm done, I don't want to fight. And I'm thinking, yeah. But remember the 3% rule. What's the 3% rule? According to history books, back during the days of the American colonies, supposedly only 3% of the population participated in the Revolutionary War and beat the British. Now, of course, some of you say, yeah, but they had muskets. Mm-hmm. And some of you say, yeah, but they also had help from the French. And I said, mm-hmm. And let's not pretend if shit blows up in England, what's the probability that other countries might step in, either to help the populace or help the state? And wait for it, come in and help the illegal migrants in the middle. You don't think that wouldn't go down like that? I mean, let's not pretend. England's got a porous border right now, almost as bad as our border was back under Sleepy Joe. And of course, England's been paying attention to recent events. England doesn't have much of an army or even a navy. Yeah. In fact, I think I forgot who told that joke, but it wasn't Tim Pool or somebody else, but they made a joke. Oh, I think it was Gutfeld. Was it Gutfeld? Maybe been Jesse Waters. But anyway, they made a joke that the English right now have more admirals than ships in the Royal Navy. And you say, wait, what? Yeah. And wait for it, you ready? Supposedly the English have more horses in their army than they have tanks. And you say, what? Yeah. In fact, I actually saw the numbers yesterday. I was shocked. Supposedly the English have about 500, I think about 500 tanks, but of those, maybe about 40 of them work. And in the meantime, they have a little over 500 horses. That is shameful. I mean, seriously shameful. Especially when you consider that England is the home of Field Marshal Montgomery, who was a tank man. Mm-hmm. You can look up the history books. Yeah. He chased Rommel halfway across the North African desert. And some of you saying, I thought that was Patton. Yeah, well, Patton was there too, but it was a joint effort. Okay, so let's not get into the weeds. But yeah, England doesn't have much of what you call security services or police forces. Now, some of you say, oh, what about MI5, MI6? Are you kidding me? MI5, MI6, oh, they can do regular James Bond stuff, but what if half of the damn population of 60 million people revolts? You think a few double O guys with their Walter PPKs can stop that mob? I'm thinking not. So yeah, you could say those 10 people who are running England are playing with fire with an open gas can. Will they learn their lesson? Maybe, as you heard in Watson's video, they finally get voted out. Because look what happened in America. Could you imagine what would have happened if cackling Harris had become the president? Oh, glory. We would have would be in for a world of hurt, because she would have doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on Sleepy Joe's policies, which let's not pretend were not even his policies. It was these woke weirdos who ended up infiltrating the Democratic Party and were trying to bring about total chaos inside the United States. Why? To bring about their revolution, of course. But of course, what's going on in England is more closer to the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab's crew. Yeah, they basically want to upend Western society and basically bring back neo-feudalism. And of course, anyone knows anything in English history knows that, yeah, they know a lot about feudalism. I mean, anyone could go on a tour of England and see all those old leftover castles from the feudal period. And wait for it, some of those castles are still occupied. Just saying. And then, but I think the people of England today are not the same people from England of the 10th century. Oh, you'll have a few rabble rousers in the way called soccer bros who probably would pick up a stick or a baseball bat or a cricket bat and maybe a couple of butcher knives and go crazy. But I think most of the people in England will probably just bow out. Sad but true. And of course, as for these illegal migrants, ooh. Let's not even pretend. These people are not nice people. Many of them are criminals. I ain't talking about just the grooming gangs either. I'm talking about a lot of these people who came from God knows where. They were criminals back in their home countries. I mean, anyone who's paying attention to what was happening here under Sleepy Joe doesn't need to be convinced of that. Because every time we caught the clowns in our neck of the woods, we had to find out the hard way that a lot of these people were gangbangers, they were rapists, they were thugs who had did all kinds of garbage, whether it be in Central America, Africa, Middle East, and God knows where else. And then they came here into spread a lot of good humor and cheer amongst our populace. So yeah, it could be a real bloody mess in England if things go really sideways. And of course, at that point you say, well, how will it turn out? That's a really good question. Because, for example, in Japan, you say Japan, give me a chance. We had a similar situation there. You had the Amnut people. I think I'm mispronouncing it right. Supposedly they had immigrated to Japan way back during the Neolithic period, when humans finally stopped living in caves and started building primitive shelters. Or for those of you who are comic book fans, yeah, during the time of Conan the Barbarian, but let's not get in the weeds. And then the Yayo people. Yayo, that sounds like a video game. Yeah, but let's not get caught in the weeds. The Yayo people, they later became the people who we know as the Japanese today. They showed up later, and they pretty much pushed out those Amnut people. Just pushed them out. And wait for it. Anyone's ever been to Sydney, Australia? Or at very least Perth? Or Queensland? Do you see too many Aborigines nowadays? Nope. Why? Same thing happened to them. Aborigines ruled the roost in Australia. The English showed up along with all those damn criminals. Remember transportation? Maybe you don't remember, but let's not get caught in the weeds. Same thing happened. And they pushed out the Aborigine people. And, wait for it, one of the big ones happened in India. And you say, India? Yeah, the subcontinent. Yeah, because I remember reading this story long ago, where they said supposedly the original indigenous people of India, who originally came from Africa about 30,000 years ago, they got overrun by the so-called Aryan invasion. And you say Aryan? You mean like white folks? Well, let's just say this, Aryan as a phrase. And when they talk about Aryan invasion, they talk about people who spoke Indo-Aryan languages, which nowadays are spoken by everybody in India, whether it be India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, even Bangladesh, and etc. Yeah. But anyway, the thing is, those people originally came from Central Asia, and they migrated south into India around 2000 BC, And the way the story went was they overran the original indigenous population of India and took the place over. And let's not pretend, India is a big place. We're talking like a population almost as big as China's. Of course, it wasn't that big back in 2000 BC, but whatever. So yeah, what's happening right now in England could go the way of what happened in India and Australia and Japan. And of course here in North America, yeah. Only difference is here in North America, the Plains Indians, no, they really fought the American Army tooth and nail. But eventually, the American government had enough guns, enough bullets to basically, well, let's just say, get their way. Just a quick reminder to all of you that my short story, The White Cat, is still available on Substack. The links are down below in the description. Join Margot Thompson, a beautiful stage actress and recent widow who finds salvation in the form of a white cat during a night of terror. And while you're looking up my oddball thriller, my book series, Glitch, is still available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other bookstores. The links are down below in the description. Join Ike and Sandra, a reluctant jewel thief and a kidnapped teen model who are on the run from the law across the American Southwest. And of course, the worst thing about it is the people who are facilitating this mess back in England, I don't think they realize what huge Donnybrook they are creating within their own country. I don't think so. I don't think they get it. I guess they figured that just like the damn people in Australia, the people of modern England just gonna be a bunch of pushovers and let all these foreigners just overrun their country and take the place over. And I'm thinking, no, because as you saw in Watson's video, that scholar who was telling the story, he invoked Boudica. And you say, Boudica, what is that, some kind of new cologne? No. Because I remember reading about Boudica. Yeah, woman was a real gnarly character, to say the least. Yeah, supposedly the way the story went was that during the time of the Romans, yeah, her husband died, and the Romans basically tried to take over the small dukedom that her husband ran. And when she tried to fight back, the Romans beat and raped her and her daughters. In other words, they were going to show her. Except she got super angry and said, I'm going to show you. And by the time the Romans basically had to stomp her out, she burnt down Londarium. And you say, Londarium, what's that? It was the name of the original capital of London. Yeah, it was called Londarium. And she rolled up in there and burnt the son of a bitch down. And killed a whole bunch of Romans in the process. So there you go. Now, will that happen again this time around? Don't know. No man knows the future, but you can look at trends. And the trends in England are not looking good. Just saying. Well, that's all I gotta say about this powder keg with the fuse lit happening in England right now. And that's my opinion.